Hi, I'm Charmayne James, and I'm here with Dr. Lewis, and we're talking about the importance of having balanced feet and a good shoeing job on your horse. What do you think, Doc?
That's a big one, and I don't want to appear critical of farriers because, but I'm going to make this statement. That's one of the more common abnormalities I see, believe it or not. And it's the horse that has imbalance from medial to lateral. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of horses that grow more foot on the outside. So you have a horse that you think's level and hitting the ground level when they're reset. And by the time you see them when they do a reset 6 weeks later or whenever, they're out of balance. And it's because those horses grow at a different rate, or possibly they wear against the shoe a little bit more on the medial side, the inside. For whatever reason, though, that's something you have to pay attention to. And like I said, I didn't want to appear critical of farriers, and the reason why I say that is because a lot of farriers, the conditions they have to work under to get a horse shod is not ideal, but they're doing the best they can do. But ideally, particularly those horses that are sensitive to imbalance, and some are more sensitive than others, the ideal situation is where a farrier can cut the foot or trim it and walk those horses on a good flat hard surface and just see how the foot's hitting the ground. And you'd be surprised the horses that you pick a foot up and it looks pretty level, but you walk them off.
Cruiser was the example of that. He had a front foot that when you had his foot picked up and you looked at it, it looked fine, but if you set it down, he would always land uneven. And he'd get sore. He'd get sore in the front end if he didn't hit the ground level. So,
some horses are naturally made that way. They're so crooked that you'll never get them hitting the ground level, and that's just that horse, and they're getting along fine with it. But there are a number of horses out here that I see that can't stand imbalance. They get a little bit off and they start getting sore, and it's compression. Usually the inside heel or the outside is longer than the inside. So they get compression on the outside and then and strain on the inside, on the ligaments, hold them together. As a fact, you watch them and they hit on the outside of the foot first, and the inside finally slams down to the ground. Well, you translate that into high speed, and that's a pretty dramatic snapping effect on the lower limb, and it causes a lot of trouble. Some horses can't tolerate it, and those particular horses you zero in on them, and that's when as a veterinarian, I have a discussion with a farrier that's working on a horse. They look, pay a lot of attention to that. I don't know what you're going to do, but get him out where you can see a horse walk when you reset him. Make sure you get him as level as you can. And usually if you work with a farrier, they'll catch that and then correct it.
one of the things I found traveling down the road is it's a great idea when you have a shoer that's doing really good with that horse, don't change it.
Good point.
Just that little angle change here or there, and it really has nothing to do with the quality of work that's done, but just once you're made do something just a little bit different, and that little angle change can really upset certain horses.
Sure, and you know, when you have a problem with a horse and you finally sort these kind of things out, be it your own self or need a veterinarian to help you get to that point, it's always important to put the shoer in the loop, the farrier in the loop with that deal, so he understands the trouble you had. He'll know that horse better than any other farrier. So he knows how to keep you from getting back in that trouble down the road. So try to stick with that guy.
Right. One other thing that comes to my mind is I sometimes see horses that are, people leave too much heel on them, and then other times you see where that foot is really run out in front of them, and the pressure that it causes on the heels or on the coffin joint, and just how important it is to make sure that foot is just balanced underneath them.
Yeah, long toe, low heel is a common thing. I work on a lot of race horses, and it's always been a horrible issue at the racetrack. Some horses grow toe faster than others, and so they'll look pretty good when they're reset, but by the time they need to be reset, or they run over the shoes, the heels are spread over the shoes, and now they got this long toe out there. You probably need to reset the horse more often to keep ahead of that. But then you see the horse that's had some problems, and somebody decided the best thing to do was stand them up, and they're exaggerated. Their heels are too high. And to me, I think you need to keep them at what's a normal angle for that horse as close as you can, as a rule. And that varies. People ask me, well, what degrees do you put a horse at? Well, that depends on the horse.
Right.
You
I
know,
agree.
it's what that foot should look like on that horse. You know, I've always been an advocate. If you have problems with a horse, something that's going to take a long turnout to get them over, and you're going to give them 6, 8 months off, jerk those shoes off on most horses and let them go barefoot. They'll wear that foot like they should, and as a rule, those horses will have a healthier foot when they come back. If you're having problems getting them to hold shoes, for example, those kind of things, you'd be surprised what 8 or 10 months off just out barefoot it'll do for most horses.
And do you suppose we could learn anything from looking at that horse after he's been out barefoot, looking at his foot and watching
Sure.
him? You know, they obviously can't wear that foot off like they need to with shoes on.
That's correct. And the other thing a lot of times I'll see is not only that, they'll end up with a better quality wall down there close to the ground. The part's got to hold nails. The second thing is that foot will invariably be a size or 2 bigger when you go back to shoeing them, which is a good thing. You know, we forget sometimes we tend to constrict horses' feet by keeping them shod all the time. And it's an abnormal thing for them to wear shoes, yet, you know, we got to wear them, got to put them on. But a break like that, allowing that foot to expand and open back up is a good thing, particularly in some horses. My wife's horse is a classic example of that. He went through an injury and went up two sizes on shoes when we.
Just being able, and also too, when that you go from, especially rodeo, and you might be in Texas in the wintertime where there's a lot of rain, and then you head to Vegas where it's really dry. You know, keeping that moisture in the foot with hoof packing or whatever to keep that foot to where it can expand a little bit, I think is huge.
Yeah.
Keeping those horses comfortable.
That's important, and you know, believe it or not, if standing around in a mud puddle isn't all bad.
Yeah, my uncle who used to shoe Scamper would always stand the horses in the mud hole before he shot them.
Right.
So now, more modern days, I used to pack their feet, you know, because some places you couldn't get to a mud puddle. But
Right.
one other thing I want to ask you quickly, a lot of people nowadays are going barefoot on their horses, and I ride some of those horses at my school, and I can feel them, that they're kind of pegging around, and the riders don't always feel that. I just know that in a rodeo environment or barrel races, there's rocks and there's a lot of different things out there. How do you feel about?
Well, you know, in a barrel horse, if I had a young daughter who was riding a barrel horse, I would be cautious about advising her to ride a barefooted horse. I think a shoe serves a purpose, and it's traction and grip, being able to grip the ground, and you don't want to risk a horse falling on you. And to me, that's one of the big purposes of having them shod.
Right.
There are horses that get along better without shoes than with them. I'll digress a little into race horses, for example. One of the best or biggest clients I ever had, who was now deceased, was a multiple Eclipse Award owner, thoroughbred owner, and as a leading owner in North America. You'd be surprised the number of horses he used to run barefoot, no shoes. And it's just because those horses didn't tolerate shoes real well. They stayed foot sore, so he'd jerk them off running barefoot. And it's surprising how those horses perform. But particularly on grass, on turf races. But that's not the same as making tight turns around a barrel.
Well,
You know,
and
so-
too, I see some people running with no shoes, and they are successful, and you don't want to change something if it's working with that horse, you
Yeah.
know. But I'm going to say most of the time, you know, I would suggest shoes on them for the purpose of traction, and
Yeah,
and then just that horse getting on, you know, bad surfaces and getting a little sore.
yeah, I agree, you know.
Okay, great, thanks.